I used to believe insomnia was the worst thing that could happen to you at night. Then I noticed my reflection was still moving after I closed my eyes, and it was practicing things I hadn't done yet.
Welcome to Horror Audiobook.
You don't lose sleep because you're tired. You lose sleep because something is watching you rest. This is the story of a woman who stayed awake too long, stared into her mirror too often, and discovered that her reflection wasn't copying her anymore. It was rehearsing her future. Every night it moved first. Every night it learned faster. And every night it crept closer to a moment she would do anything to stop if the mirror would let her. Chapter 1. You don't notice the first night it happens. The apartment had learned her routines better than any person ever had. At 2:11 a.m., the refrigerator hummed louder. At 2:14, the pipes sighed behind the bathroom wall like something settling into sleep it didn't deserve. At 2:17, the digital clock on her nightstand blinked once, always once, as if checking whether she was still awake. She always was. Insomnia wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was repetition ground down to a dull ache. The same ceiling cracks traced every night. The same streetlight leaked through the blinds, painting pale bars across the wall. The same mirror across from the bed waited, tall and rectangular, catching whatever light the room surrendered. She had stopped thinking of the mirror as an object months ago. It was just part of the night now, like the clock, like the dark. She lay on her side, eyes open, counting breaths without numbers. Inhale, pause, exhale. Her body knew the motions even when her mind refused to follow. Somewhere beneath the ribs, exhaustion pooled heavy and useless. I thought I was just overtired. The phrase came easily now. It was an explanation that fit everything and asked nothing in return. When sleep wouldn't come, she would sit up. When sitting failed, she would stand, bare feet on cold laminate, fingers brushing the wall as she crossed the bedroom. The mirror greeted her with familiar honesty, tired eyes, hair flattened on one side, skin dull under artificial light. She didn't linger. She never had. Mirrors at night felt too intimate, like holding eye contact for too long with a stranger on an empty train. She splashed water on her face in the bathroom, avoiding the reflection there too. The mirror above the sink was smaller, warped slightly at the edges, forgiving in a way the bedroom mirror was not. She dried her hands on her shirt, returned to the bedroom, and stood where she always stood, across from herself. The clock read 2:43. She rubbed her eyes. Her reflection did the same, perfectly synchronized, predictable, reassuring. She watched for a moment longer than usual, searching her own face for some sign of why her body had betrayed her again. The mirror offered nothing new. I thought I was just overtired. Back in bed, she closed her eyes and waited for sleep to ambush her the way it sometimes did, sudden, unearned, almost rude. Instead, thoughts drifted in lazy, half-formed shapes. Work emails she hadn't answered. A conversation from years ago she still resented. The hum of the refrigerator grew louder, then softer. Time stretched. The clock turned to 3:06. At some point, she couldn't say when, she became aware of the mirror again. Not visually. Not yet. Just a sense of orientation, like knowing where a door is in the dark without touching it. She opened her eyes. The mirror showed her exactly as expected, lying on her side, facing it, one arm bent under the pillow. Her breathing matched the slow rise and fall of the reflection's chest. Relief came quietly. Familiar things still obeyed rules. She blinked. The reflection blinked too. She turned onto her back, staring at the ceiling. The mirror reflected the motion faithfully. No lag, no distortion, just glass doing what glass had always done. She exhaled, long and shaky, and laughed under her breath at herself. Insomnia made cowards out of shadows. Minutes passed, or hours. Outside, a car drove by and vanished. The streetlight flickered, briefly dimming the room before stabilizing again. She rolled onto her side. The mirror followed. Almost. It was nothing, barely anything, a fraction of a second, the kind of delay you could blame on tired eyes or a wandering mind. But it existed. Her shoulder pressed into the mattress. The reflection's shoulder followed a heartbeat later. She frowned. I thought I was just overtired. She pushed herself up on one elbow. The mirror did the same. The delay shrank, then vanished entirely like it had never been there at all. Her heart slowed, embarrassed by its own reaction. Get some sleep, she whispered to the room, to herself, to the mirror if it insisted on listening. She stood, stretched, and paced the bedroom once, twice. The mirror tracked every step with obedient precision. When she stopped, it stopped. When she tilted her head, it tilted too. There, see, normal. She crawled back into bed and pulled the blanket up to her chin. The clock read 3:31. Her eyelids felt heavier now, finally flirting with surrender. Just before she closed her eyes, she looked at the mirror one last time. The reflection looked back. She shut her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, sleep hovered close enough to feel. Her breathing deepened. Muscles loosened their careful grip on tension. Behind her, the mirror held its image. For a moment, then so slight it could never be proven, the reflection adjusted its posture. Not much, just a subtle shift of weight, a settling movement like someone preparing to wait. By the time her eyes fluttered open again, the mirror was still. Perfectly still. By morning, she wouldn't remember the delay at all, only the familiar frustration, the exhaustion, the explanation that smoothed everything over. I thought I was just overtired. And the mirror, patient and silent, would wait for the next night. Chapter 2. The reflection that blinked too late. Sleep did not come the next night. It hovered, distant and teasing, but never crossed the threshold. By midnight, the apartment had resumed its quiet choreography. The hum, the sighs, the distant traffic washing past like a tide that never reached shore. She lay still, eyes open, counting nothing. By 1:38 a.m., she was already standing in front of the mirror. This time, she didn't pretend it was accidental. The overhead light buzzed faintly, casting her reflection in pale yellow tones. Her face looked wrong in the way familiar things sometimes did when you stared too long, features flattening, proportions shifting without actually changing. She leaned closer, examining the faint crease between her eyebrows, the purplish shadows beneath her eyes. She blinked. The reflection blinked. A second passed. She blinked again, slower this time, deliberately exaggerating the motion. Lids down, pause, lids up. The reflection followed. Almost. The delay was subtle, but it was there. Not enough to measure, not enough to prove, just enough to feel. Her chest tightened. Mirrors don't decide when to move. The thought arrived uninvited, sharp and certain. She had no idea where it came from, only that it felt like a rule she'd forgotten, not one she'd just invented. She leaned back, increasing the distance between herself and the glass. The reflection did the same, lagging by that same infinitesimal fraction of a second. The air felt thicker now, as if the room itself were holding its breath. "Stop it," she murmured, though she wasn't sure who she was addressing. She turned her head sharply to the left. The reflection followed, too late. Her pulse spiked. She stared harder, daring the mirror to betray itself again. Seconds ticked by. The delay shrank, then disappeared entirely, smoothing itself over like a mistake corrected before anyone noticed. Relief washed through her, hot and dizzying. I thought I was just overtired. The explanation felt thinner now, but she clung to it anyway. Fatigue did strange things to perception. Doctors said so. Articles said so. Forums were full of people describing hallucinations born from sleepless nights. This was just another entry in that endless catalog. She raised her hand. The reflection raised its hand. She lowered it. So did the mirror. Perfectly synchronized. She let out a shaky laugh. "See," she whispered, "see." She turned away from the mirror and took 2 steps toward the bed. Her skin prickled immediately. It wasn't fear, not at first. It was something closer to pressure, a sensation like stepping away from the edge of a cliff without looking down. Her shoulders tightened, her stomach twisted. Behind her, she knew the mirror was there. She stopped. The feeling intensified, blooming into a quiet panic that made her breath come shallow and fast. She had the irrational certainty that something important was happening behind her back, something she was failing to witness. Slowly she turned around. The reflection was still, waiting. The pressure eased, just enough for her to breathe again. She frowned, unsettled by the pattern already forming in her mind. Looking away felt wrong, worse than looking. She sat on the edge of the bed, positioning herself so the mirror stayed within her peripheral vision. The mattress dipped beneath her weight. The reflection followed a beat later. There it was again. She watched closely now, cataloging every movement, every breath. Her chest rose. The reflection's chest rose after it. Her fingers twitched. The reflection's fingers twitched late. Mirrors don't decide when to move. She whispered the words aloud this time, testing how they sounded in the air. They felt heavier spoken, like an accusation. Minutes passed, or maybe only seconds. Time behaved strangely when she focused this hard, compressing and stretching without warning. Her eyes burned. She blinked to relieve the dryness. The reflection blinked too. Too late. A full second passed before its eyes closed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She stood abruptly, the movement sharp and unplanned. The mirror's version of her rose more slowly, as if wadding through resistance. "No," she said louder now. "No, no, no." The reflection finished standing and stared back at her, expression unchanged. Tired, neutral, hers. The delay vanished again, snapping back into perfect mimicry like a snapped elastic band. She pressed her palms to the glass. It was cool, solid, unforgiving. Her reflection did the same, palms meeting hers through the thin barrier of silver and backing. For a moment they stood like that, breathing, blinking, alive on both sides. She pulled her hands away. The reflection hesitated. Just barely. Her mouth went dry. She didn't move again, neither did the mirror. They remained frozen in that position, locked in a stalemate measured in breaths. The apartment seemed to lean in around them, every sound magnified by the silence between movements. Eventually her legs began to shake. Exhaustion reclaimed its territory, heavy and insistent. She couldn't keep this vigil forever. Slowly, carefully, she sat back down on the bed without breaking eye contact. The reflection followed, late. A sob threatened, sudden and embarrassing. She swallowed it down, forcing calm into her posture, into her face. Panic would only make things worse. Panic would give meaning to something that might still be meaningless. "I thought I was just overtired." She lay back, eyes locked on the mirror. She did not look away again. Minutes stretched into something brittle and endless. Her eyelids drooped, fluttering despite her efforts. Each blink felt dangerous now, a small surrender. Behind the glass, the reflection watched her with unwavering attention. When her eyes finally closed, not in sleep, but in a brief, helpless lapse, the reflection blinked first. By the time she opened them again, it was already staring back. Still, patient, and unmistakably awake. Chapter 3. Insomnia makes you a liar to yourself. By the third night, she had already decided what the problem was. Insomnia didn't just keep you awake, it rewired you. It blurred the line between thought and sensation, between imagination and perception. She had read that somewhere, years ago, in an article she barely remembered but trusted anyway. Sleep deprivation caused microsleeps, visual lag, dissociation. The brain filled gaps with guesses and called them reality. That was all this was. She repeated the explanation while brushing her teeth, while standing under the shower's weak spray, while dressing for work with hands that felt slightly disconnected from her arms. She said it silently, like a mantra, until it began to sound convincing again. Science had answers, fear didn't. During the day, the mirror behaved. In the bathroom at work, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, her reflection was immediate and obedient. When she smiled politely at a coworker passing behind her, the mirror smiled back without delay. When she rubbed her temples during a headache, it followed perfectly. Normal. The problem, she decided, was low light, fatigue, context. Mirrors at night were different, long shadows, tired eyes, expectations primed for distortion. By the time evening settled in, she had almost convinced herself. Almost. The apartment greeted her with its usual stillness. The air smelled faintly of dust and warm plastic from electronics left on standby. She ate standing up, barely tasting the food, eyes flicking occasionally toward the dark rectangle of the bedroom mirror visible down the hall. She avoided it until she couldn't anymore. At 12:52 a.m., she stood in front of it again. The overhead light was on this time, bright, deliberate, clinical. She wanted no shadows, no ambiguity. Her reflection looked worse than she felt. Eyes rimmed red, skin pale, mouth set in a tight, defensive line. "Okay," she said quietly, "okay." She raised her right hand. The reflection raised its right hand. No delay. She lowered it. Perfect sync. Her shoulders loosened slightly. "See," she whispered as if the mirror might argue. "See, nothing." She turned her wrist, inspecting the faint blue veins beneath the skin. The reflection copied the motion. The glass felt inert again, harmless. Her gaze drifted, unfocused, catching on the small scar near her left wrist, an old kitchen accident barely visible now. Without thinking, she scratched just above it. The itch bloomed suddenly, sharp and insistent. Her reflection scratched first. Her hand froze midair. The itch vanished, leaving only cold awareness in its place. Her fingers hovered inches from her skin, unmoving. In the mirror, the scratching motion finished. Slowly, deliberately. She stared at her wrist. It didn't itch. It hadn't until. My body hadn't decided to do that yet. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her heart thudded hard enough to make her lightheaded. She flexed her fingers, grounding herself in sensation. Panic crept in around the edges of her thoughts, testing for weakness. No, this was exactly what she'd read about. Anticipatory movement. The brain predicting its own actions and misfiring under stress. The reflection wasn't early, she was late. That explanation felt clever, reassuring. She nodded to herself once. My body hadn't decided to do that yet, she repeated, firmer this time. She stepped back from the mirror, breaking the moment. The itch did not return. The reflection stepped back with her, obedient again. Their proof. She turned away, walked to the bed, and sat down. The mirror stayed in view, but she refused to look directly at it now. Peripheral vision was safer, less precise, easier to dismiss. She scrolled through her phone, the blue light harsh and comforting. Articles about sleep deprivation. Forum posts from strangers describing visual glitches, delayed reflections, phantom sensations. "You're not crazy," one comment read. "Your brain is just tired." She clung to that sentence like a lifeline. When she finally looked up again, the mirror showed her sitting on the bed, shoulders hunched, phone glowing in her hands. She yawned. The reflection yawned too. Too wide. She snapped her mouth shut, breath catching. The mirror's version of her finished the yawn slowly, jaw stretching farther than hers had, teeth visible in a way that felt too intimate. "My body hadn't decided to do that yet," she whispered, automatically now. The phrase was losing its power. She stood abruptly, the movement sharp enough to make her dizzy. The reflection stood a moment later, smooth and unhurried. Her stomach dropped. "Stop," she said, "just stop." The mirror did not respond, it only watched. She crossed the room and turned off the overhead light, plunging the space into dimness. The streetlight outside painted the mirror in pale stripes again, blurring details. Less clarity meant less certainty. From the bed, she watched the reflection through half-lowered lashes. Her breathing slowed, then steadied. The mirror matched it after a pause. She curled onto her side, knees drawn up, eyes fixed on the glass. Minutes passed. The apartment creaked softly, settling. Somewhere a neighbor flushed a toilet, normal sounds, normal life. Her wrist tingled. She did not move. In the mirror, the reflection lifted its hand. Her breath hitched. The reflected fingers hovered over the scar, hesitating, almost as if waiting for permission. "My body hadn't decided to do that yet," she whispered, voice trembling. The reflection scratched anyway. She squeezed her eyes shut, heart racing, the itch exploding across her skin now that she was aware of it. When she opened them again, the mirror showed her gripping her wrist tightly, knuckles white. The reflection smiled. Just barely. And this time when she flinched, it didn't bother to catch up at all. Chapter 4. The mirror starts practicing. By the fourth night, she no longer pretended the mirror was innocent. She still told herself it was exhaustion, still recited articles and half-remembered explanations like protective charms, but something had shifted. The mirror was no longer a passive surface she occasionally distrusted. It had become an active presence in the apartment, like a second tenant who didn't pay rent and never slept. She came home earlier than usual, drawn by an urge she refused to name. The sun was still low, dusk bleeding slowly into the corners of the rooms. For a brief, fragile hour, the mirror behaved again. It reflected her movements with perfect obedience, catching the warm light and softening her features. She stood in front of it, arms crossed, studying both versions of herself. "You're just a mirror," she said, almost kindly. The reflection crossed its arms too. She waited. Nothing happened. Relief loosened something in her chest. Maybe the night was the problem. Maybe daylight kept things honest. Then her reflection shifted its weight. She hadn't. The movement was casual, almost bored. One hip cocked slightly, shoulders relaxing. It was the way someone settled in when they expected to be standing somewhere for a while. Her stomach dropped. Slowly she mirrored the stance, forcing her body to match what the reflection had already done. The moment she did, the reflection straightened again, returning to neutral. It was correcting itself. "No," she whispered. She stepped back. The reflection stepped back too, but it had already begun the motion before her foot left the floor. Her breath turned shallow. She raised a hand, then stopped halfway, testing. In the mirror, the hand continued upward, fingers splaying open as if finishing a thought she hadn't committed to. The reflection lowered its hand only after she did. Her heart hammered. This wasn't lag anymore. This was anticipation. She backed away until her calves hit the bed. The reflection followed, stopping where the bed would have been on its side of the glass. They stood there, facing each other across the invisible divide, the room quiet except for her breathing. Then the reflection opened its mouth. No sound came out. Her own lips were still pressed together. The reflected mouth moved again, shaping words without voice, slow, careful, as if practicing pronunciation. She shook her head violently, breaking eye contact, stumbling back until she fell onto the bed. The mirror remained in her peripheral vision, but she refused to look directly at it now. Her heart raced, then gradually slowed. Panic burned hot and fast, then ebbed, leaving exhaustion in its wake. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, telling herself she was spiraling. That fear created patterns where none existed. Minutes passed. Carefully, she turned her head. The reflection was standing with its mouth closed, posture neutral, still, obedient. She laughed weakly. "You almost had me," she murmured. She stood, smoothing her clothes, forcing calm into her movements. The reflection followed, this time without leading. "See," she told herself, "still just a mirror." She went about her evening ritual with deliberate slowness. Made tea, washed the mug immediately after, turned off unnecessary lights. Each time she moved, she checked the mirror. Each time it copied her. Until it didn't. As she brushed her teeth, foam gathering at the corners of her mouth, she noticed the reflection turn its head slightly to the side. She froze. The reflected head completed the turn, staring at something over her shoulder. Her bathroom door was open. The hallway beyond was dark. She did not turn around. "My body hasn't," she started, then stopped. The words felt useless now. The reflection's gaze lingered, curious, then returned to face her. Only then did she feel the delayed ache in her neck as she realized she had begun to turn without noticing. She finished brushing her teeth with shaking hands. Back in the bedroom, she stood before the mirror again, exhaustion pressing down on her like a physical weight. Her eyelids fluttered. She forced them open. The reflection stood straighter than she did. That was when she understood. It wasn't reacting late. It was preparing early. She sat on the bed. The reflection was already sitting when her knees bent. She stood again abruptly. The reflection rose smoothly, finishing the motion before she did. Her chest tightened with a cold, sinking certainty. It was learning my timing. The words felt wrong in her mouth, but true. She paced the room, movements erratic now. The reflection moved too, but always a step ahead, like it knew where she was going before she did. She stopped suddenly. The reflection stopped first. She turned sharply. The reflection was already facing her. Her pulse roared in her ears. The apartment felt smaller now, walls closing in, the mirror swallowing light instead of reflecting it. She backed toward the door, then stopped. Running wouldn't help. Wherever she went, there would be glass, windows, screens, polished surfaces waiting patiently. She sat on the bed again, defeated. The reflection sat composed. She closed her eyes. In the darkness, she felt a shift, a subtle change in the air, like someone standing up behind her. She opened her eyes. The reflection was standing. It smiled without sound. "It was learning my timing," she whispered. She pulled the blanket around herself, as if fabric could protect her from glass. Her eyes burned, desperate for rest, but terror kept them open. The reflection leaned closer to the mirror, studying her face with unsettling focus. It was learning my timing. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Somewhere deep inside, a final, horrifying thought took root. If it was practicing now, then one night soon, it wouldn't need to watch her at all. It was learning my timing. Chapter 5. It knows things I haven't lived yet. By the fifth night, the mirror stopped being subtle. She woke before dawn with her heart racing and her mouth dry, the lingering sense of having missed something important. The bedroom was still dark, the mirror a black rectangle across from the bed. For a long moment, she lay there listening, to the apartment, to her own breath, to the silence beneath both. She didn't look. Not right away. That, she had learned, was a mistake. When she finally forced herself to sit up, the mirror was already waiting. The reflection stood at attention, posture straighter than hers, eyes alert in a way she no longer felt. It lifted its hand. She hadn't moved. The reflected hand gestured as if greeting someone, a small, polite wave. Her stomach twisted. "No," she whispered, "that's not." The reflection lowered its hand and smiled faintly, as if amused by her confusion. Later that morning, at work, she ran into her manager in the hallway. He greeted her with a distracted wave. She waved back. The exact same wave. The realization hit her hours later when the memory replayed itself with sickening clarity. The angle of the wrist, the hesitant fingers, the polite, restrained motion. The mirror hadn't guessed. It had remembered. That night she stood in front of it with the lights on, arms folded tight against her ribs. Her reflection stood differently now, looser, more confident, like it had somewhere to be. "Show me," she said hoarsely. "If you're going to do it anyway, just show me." The reflection tilted its head, considering. Then it began to move. It paced the room with purpose, stopping at the desk by the window. Its hand reached out, knocking over a stack of papers. The reflected version of her flinched, clutching its wrist as if in pain. She stared breath-shallow. The next day she sliced her wrist on a jagged staple while cleaning her desk at work. Not badly, but enough to sting, enough to leave a thin red line. That night the mirror adjusted. It showed her pulling her hand away before the papers fell. She slammed her palm against the glass. "No," she said, "you don't get to change it." The reflection only watched. She stopped sleeping altogether after that. Instead, she studied. Each night, the mirror offered her pieces of the next day. Small things at first, conversations with coworkers, a missed step on the stairs, the exact moment her voice would crack while laughing at a joke she didn't find funny. Each time she tried to interfere. If the mirror showed her spilling coffee, she gripped the mug with both hands the next morning. The coffee stayed upright. That night, the reflection showed her tripping instead. If it showed her crying alone in her car, she drove home with the radio blaring, jaw clenched tight. No tears fell. The next night, the mirror showed her breaking down in the shower instead, water hiding the sound. "The future didn't disappear," she whispered one night, exhausted and shaking. "It updated." The reflection nodded. She grew frantic, obsessive. She rearranged her days around the mirror's warnings, avoiding places, people, entire conversations. She called in sick to work to dodge a confrontation she'd seen reflected the night before. That evening, the mirror showed her alone in the apartment, phone in hand, listening to a voicemail she hadn't received yet. Her reflection pressed the phone to its ear and crumpled. The next day, the voicemail came anyway. Different words, same grief. She screamed then, raw and broken, sound tearing from her throat. The mirror screamed too, but its mouth opened wider, its expression exaggerated, theatrical. "Practiced." She slumped to the floor, back against the bed, eyes fixed on the glass. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice hollow. The reflection crouched, meeting her eye level. It didn't answer. It only watched her cry, cataloging the way her shoulders shook, the way her breath hitched. That night she dreamed, briefly, horribly, of standing on the other side of the mirror, watching herself sleep. She woke gasping, heart hammering, and staggered to her feet. The reflection was already standing. It gestured toward the door. The next day, she avoided leaving the apartment at all. The mirror responded by showing her a fall down the stairs she hadn't taken. That night, the reflection showed her lying in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling while the room darkened around her. She was already doing that. The boundary between rehearsal and reality blurred, until she could no longer tell which side of the glass she was meant to be on. On the sixth night, or maybe the seventh, counting had become unreliable. The mirror showed her something new. An argument. Her reflection stood close to someone else, face twisted with anger. Its mouth moved rapidly, soundless but furious. Then it recoiled as if struck, hand flying to its cheek. She stared, pulse roaring. "I don't fight with anyone," she whispered. "There's no one." The next day, a stranger brushed past her on the subway platform, hard enough to make her stumble. She snapped at him without thinking, words sharp and venomous. His response was swift. That night, the mirror adjusted the angle of the slap. She sank onto the bed, laughter bubbling up hysterical and broken. "You're not showing me the future," she said. "You're making it." The reflection smiled. It was a small, satisfied expression. When she finally closed her eyes that night, not sleeping, just resting them for a second, the mirror leaned closer to the glass. When she opened them again, it was still there. Still watching. Still rehearsing. The future hadn't stopped coming. It never would. It would only keep updating. And somewhere in that endless rehearsal, she realized with creeping horror, there would come a night when the mirror stopped showing her tomorrow at all. Because it wouldn't need to. Chapter 6. Every time I tried to stop it, it got faster. She decided the mirror had to go. The thought arrived with the clarity of desperation, sharp and undeniable. Whatever this thing was, hallucination, parasite, fracture in reality, it needed a surface. Glass, reflection, a place to stand. So she would take that place away. The decision gave her a brief, fragile sense of control. Purpose steadied her hands as she crossed the bedroom and yanked the mirror forward. It was heavier than she expected, the frame biting into her palms. Dust puffed into the air as she dragged it face down onto the floor. She didn't look at the glass while she worked. She couldn't. Instead, she covered it with the thickest blanket she owned, folding it over and over until no edge of silver showed through. She taped the corners down with shaking hands, sealing it like a body. Her heart pounded as she stepped back. Silence. No pressure, no watching sensation crawling up her spine. She laughed, a short, breathless sound. "That's it," she said aloud. "You're done." She didn't sleep, but she rested. For the first time in days, she lay on the bed without staring into glass. Her muscles loosened. Her thoughts slowed. Relief crept in. Then she noticed the window. Moonlight spilled through it, pale and steady, turning the dark pane into a faint mirror. She saw herself there, blurred, distorted, but unmistakable. Her reflection in the window smiled. She stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. The reflection lingered a moment longer than it should have, then snapped into sync as she moved. "No," she whispered. "No, no." She yanked the curtains shut, plunging the room into darkness. Her breath came fast and shallow. She pressed her back against the wall, eyes darting. Her phone buzzed in her hand. The black screen reflected her face. And the face on the screen blinked before she did. She dropped the phone like it burned, watching it clatter across the floor. The screen went dark, but the sense of being watched didn't. It already knew what I'd choose. The phrase surfaced unbidden, cold and certain. The next day she avoided glass entirely. She kept her eyes down on the sidewalk, ignored store windows, turned picture frames face down. At work, she used the bathroom stall mirror only long enough to check for bloodshot eyes, refusing to meet her own gaze. It didn't matter. In the elevator, she caught her reflection in the polished metal doors. It stood straighter than she did, smiling faintly. She looked away. The smile lingered. At lunch, she stirred her soup and saw her face ripple across the surface. The reflection's lips moved, shaping silent laughter. She knocked the bowl over in panic, scalding liquid splashing across the table. Coworkers stared. Someone asked if she was okay. She nodded too fast, too hard. It already knew what I'd choose. That night, she shattered the bedroom mirror. The act itself was almost anticlimactic. One swing with a hammer, then another. Glass cracked beneath the blanket with dull, satisfying thuds. The sound echoed through the apartment, sharp and final. When she pulled the blanket away, the mirror was a spiderweb of broken silver. She sagged against the wall, chest heaving. "You don't exist," she said to the shards. "You can't." For a moment she believed it. Then she saw herself in the fragments. Dozens of reflections stared back, each one slightly different. Some smiled. Some watched with neutral interest. One, just one, was already standing as if it had never been lying down at all. She screamed and fled the room, slamming the door behind her. She slept on the couch that night, lights on, television murmuring nonsense into the air. Exhaustion dragged at her limbs, heavy and irresistible. Her eyes fluttered despite her efforts. Just before sleep took her, she saw herself reflected in the dark TV screen. The reflection was already asleep. She jerked awake with a gasp. Morning came like a bruise, slow, painful, unwelcome. She felt hollowed out, scraped raw from the inside. Her body moved on instinct alone. She avoided mirrors all day. Still, reflections found her. A car window, a stainless steel sink, the curved surface of a spoon. Everywhere her reflection appeared faster now, less cautious, more confident. It didn't wait for her movements anymore. It anticipated them. Worse than that, it smiled when she hesitated. That night she tried something different. She sat perfectly still on the bed, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the far wall. She refused to move, refused to give it anything to copy. Minutes passed. Then the reflection moved anyway. She saw it out of the corner of her eye, in the sliver of glass still clinging to the mirror frame. It shifted, testing its limbs, rolling its shoulders like a runner warming up. Her breath caught. She didn't move. The reflection stood. She remained seated. The reflection took a step forward. Her heart thundered, but she stayed frozen, teeth clenched so hard her jaw ached. The reflection smiled wider. It took another step. It already knew what I'd choose. She bolted. The reflection ran. She slammed herself into the bathroom, locking the door, chest heaving. The mirror above the sink was covered now. She had taped cardboard over it earlier, but she could still feel it there, waiting. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. She already knew what the reflection would be doing. Outside the bathroom door, something shifted. A soft sound, bare feet on laminate. Her heart slowed in a strange, terrible way. Whatever she tried, covering, breaking, running, it only made the thing in the mirror faster, smarter, more certain. Because every choice she made to stop it. It had already practiced. And it already knew what she'd choose next. Chapter 7. The night it showed me how I would die. The mirror waited until she was weakest. Not frantic, not panicked, just empty. 3 nights had passed without real sleep, only brief collapses into half-consciousness that left her more exhausted than before. Her thoughts moved slowly now, as if wading through deep water. Her body felt distant, unreliable. Hunger came and went unnoticed. Time lost its edges. That was when the mirror decided to be clear. She stood in the bedroom at 3:02 a.m., bare feet numb against the floor, staring at the fractured remains of the mirror she had failed to destroy. Most of the glass was gone now, swept up, thrown away, but a tall strip still clung to the wall where the frame had been bolted in place. Just enough. Her reflection stood inside it, whole. Not cracked, not fragmented. Complete. Her heart slowed in a way that frightened her more than panic ever had. The reflection did not smile. It did not rush. It began slowly, deliberately, like someone performing a ritual they had practiced many times. It walked to the bed. She did not move. The reflection sat. She remained standing. Then the reflection lay down. Carefully, precisely, it arranged the pillow, pulled the blanket up to its chest, turned its head toward the wall. She watched frozen. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered, "because I couldn't look away." The reflection closed its eyes. Her breath hitched. Nothing happened for a long moment. The apartment was silent, oppressive. Her legs trembled, but she didn't sit. She couldn't. Then the reflection's chest stopped rising. It lay still. Too still. Her heart began to race again. "That's not," she started, then stopped. The reflection's mouth opened. No sound came out. Its face twisted, not in pain but in something quieter, something resigned. Then its eyes snapped open. And it sat up. Her reflection swung its legs over the side of the bed and stood, movement stiff now, awkward in a way she had never moved before. It took a step. Then another. It reached the mirror and raised a hand. It pressed its palm flat against the glass. She raised her own hand without realizing it. They touched skin to cold surface, aligned perfectly. The reflection leaned closer. Its mouth moved. She didn't need sound to understand. This is how it ends. She staggered back, bile rising in her throat. "No," she whispered. "No, you don't get to decide that." The reflection tilted its head. Then it showed her the rest. The next movement was sudden. The reflection lurched forward as if losing balance. Its hand slid down the glass, fingers clawing for purchase that didn't exist. Its body twisted, collapsing sideways. Her heart slammed painfully. She saw it all. The angle of the fall. The way the head struck first. The stillness afterward. Unmistakable. Final. She screamed and tore her gaze away, stumbling blindly into the hallway, slamming her shoulder into the wall. Her lungs burned. Her vision swam. "I couldn't sleep because I couldn't look away," she sobbed. And I couldn't look away because she had just watched herself die. She didn't return to the bedroom that night. Or the next. She paced the apartment endlessly, lights blazing, windows covered, every reflective surface hidden or shattered. She drank coffee until her hands shook. She slapped herself when her eyelids drooped. She stood under cold showers until her teeth chattered. Sleep was no longer rest. Sleep was surrender. Days blurred together. Her thoughts frayed at the edges. She spoke aloud to no one, narrating her movements, anchoring herself in sound. "I'm standing," she said. "I'm breathing, I'm awake." But the reflection followed her anyway. In the microwave door. In the dark screen of her laptop. In the sheen of the countertop. Every time she caught it, it was already closer to the end. Each night it replayed the sequence more efficiently now. Fewer wasted movements, better balance, cleaner fall. Optimizing. She stopped eating. Food felt pointless. She stopped answering messages. Time spent on other people felt dangerous. All that mattered was staying awake. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. Her body rebelled. She experienced moments where she was certain she had blinked for hours, only to find the clock had moved seconds. Other times, she lost entire chunks of time, finding herself standing in rooms she didn't remember entering. Once she found herself on the bed. She screamed and scrambled away, heart exploding in her chest. "I couldn't sleep," she gasped, "because I couldn't look away." On the fourth day, maybe the fifth, she returned to the bedroom. She didn't remember deciding to. The hallway ended abruptly at the cracked door, and beyond it the mirror waited. Her reflection was already there. Already standing. Already watching her approach. Its eyes were calm. Confident. She felt something shift inside her then. Not fear, not panic, but a terrible understanding. The reflection wasn't showing her a possibility. It wasn't predicting. It was remembering. Because somewhere, sometime soon, this had already happened. Her knees buckled. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the glass, daring herself to look away. "I couldn't sleep because I couldn't look away," she whispered one last time. The reflection sat too. But it didn't lie down this time. It stood. And it reached for the mirror, as if testing how close the end really was. Chapter 8. Sleep is when it gets permission. The realization didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly, pieced together from fragments of terror and half-remembered moments, until it formed something undeniable. The mirror only moved forward when she slept. Not when she blinked intentionally, not when she turned away, not even when she screamed and ran. Only when she lost time. She noticed it one morning, if it could still be called morning, standing in the kitchen with her hands braced against the counter. Her head throbbed, pressure building behind her eyes. The apartment smelled stale, like dust and old air that hadn't been disturbed in days. She stared at the microwave clock. 6:12 a.m. She blinked. 6:14 a.m. Her breath caught. 2 minutes gone. Her heart began to pound as she scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place. No new bruises, no broken glass, no sign she'd fallen or moved. But when she turned toward the dark screen of the microwave door, her reflection stood closer than it had before. Not dramatically, not enough that she could point to it and say this is different, just closer in the way a predator inches forward while its prey is distracted. She staggered back. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Her mind raced, replaying the past days, every escalation, every sudden jump, every time the mirror seemed to leap ahead instead of inch forward. It always followed rest. Micro-sleeps, collapses, moments where her thoughts went soft and unfocused. Sleep wasn't rest. Sleep was permission. The knowledge hollowed her out. From that moment on, she fought her own body as fiercely as she fought the mirror. She stopped sitting down. She paced constantly, muscles burning, legs trembling. She drank cold water until her stomach hurt. She chewed ice to shock herself awake. She slapped her own face when her vision blurred. Blinking became dangerous. She learned the difference between a blink and a lapse. A blink was sharp, controlled. A lapse came with warmth, with comfort, with the lie that closing her eyes for just a second wouldn't matter. Each time she felt it coming, her heart raced with animal panic. Not sleep, not even for a moment. "I can't," she whispered over and over. "I can't, I can't, I can't." The mirror tested her. It always did. Standing in the hallway, she caught her reflection in the glass of a framed photograph, her and an old friend, smiling, happy in a way that felt unreal now. The reflection lifted its hand. She did not. It lowered it again, smiling faintly, as if amused by the restraint. Her eyes burned. Tears streamed down her face unbidden, blurring everything. She wiped them away violently. Tears were dangerous too. Water softened focus. Soft focus led to lost seconds. She pressed her fingernails into her palm until pain bloomed sharp and grounding. The reflection flinched. Before she did, her breath hitched. The mirror was changing the rules. By the second night without sleep, the reflection no longer waited for full lapses. It began to move while her eyes were open. Just barely. She stood in the bathroom, staring at the cardboard covering the mirror above the sink. The edges had peeled slightly, revealing a thin strip of glass. She stared at that strip like it was a loaded gun. Her eyes fluttered. The reflection's fingers slid into view from the edge of the cardboard. She gasped and snapped her eyes wide open. The fingers froze. They remained there, visible, waiting. Her knees threatened to buckle. She backed away, breathing hard, eyes locked on the glass. "I see you," she whispered hoarsely. "I'm watching." The fingers retreated, slowly, reluctantly. She laughed then, a thin, hysterical sound. "That's right," she said. "You don't get anything unless I sleep." The victory was fragile. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. Her thoughts began to unravel. Words lost meaning. Sentences looped in her mind without conclusion. She caught herself repeating phrases aloud just to hear something familiar. I'm awake, I'm awake, I'm awake. Her reflection mouthed the words with her. No delay. No practice. Perfect synchronization. That terrified her more than anything else so far. She stumbled into the bedroom without realizing it, drawn by exhaustion she could no longer fight. The bed loomed like a trap, sheets rumpled and inviting. She stood in front of it, swaying. The mirror, what remained of it, showed her reflection already lying down. Her heart screamed. No, she croaked. No, I didn't. The reflection turned its head toward her. Its eyes were open, wide, alert, as if it had been waiting for her to notice. She staggered back, slamming into the wall. Pain exploded through her shoulder, sharp enough to cut through the fog. She welcomed it. Pain meant awake. She slid down the wall to the floor, knees pulled tight to her chest. She stared at the mirror fragment without blinking, tears streaming freely now. I can't sleep, she whispered, because if I sleep, you move. The reflection nodded. Slowly, deliberately. Then, while her eyes were still open, it shifted its weight. Just a fraction. Just enough. Her breath caught in her throat. The rules were collapsing. Sleep wasn't the only permission anymore. Exhaustion itself was enough. Her vision tunneled. The edges of the room darkened. She fought it with everything she had, nails digging into skin, teeth clenched until her jaw ached. The reflection stepped closer. She screamed, raw and hoarse, the sound tearing out of her chest. The noise echoed through the apartment, grounding her just enough to hold the darkness back. The reflection stopped. They stayed like that, locked in place, breathing in unison, for a long, terrible moment. Somewhere deep inside, she understood the truth she'd been avoiding. It wasn't waiting for her to sleep anymore. It was waiting for her to fail. And sooner or later. Everyone does. Chapter 9. I closed my eyes first, and that was the mistake. She did not remember deciding to sit on the floor. One moment she was standing, back against the wall, eyes burning, heart hammering. The next, she was on the carpet, knees drawn to her chest, cheek pressed against fabric that smelled faintly of dust and old detergent. Her body had begun making decisions without consulting her. That frightened her more than the mirror ever had. Her eyes ached constantly now, a deep, throbbing pain behind them that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Every blink left behind a smear of darkness that lingered a fraction too long. Her thoughts stuttered, looping back on themselves, words unraveling mid-sentence. She whispered to stay anchored. I'm awake, she said. The words felt soft, unreliable. Across the room, the mirror fragment waited. The reflection stood closer than it had ever been before, not pressing against the glass, not reaching. Just ready. She stared at it with all the focus she had left, terrified of what would happen if she didn't. Her eyelids fluttered. No, she croaked, not yet. The room swayed gently like the deck of a ship. The sensation was almost comforting. Almost. That was how it got you. Her head dipped forward, chin brushing her chest. Her eyes closed. Just for a second. When they opened again, something was wrong. The air felt quieter, thicker, as if the room had absorbed a sound she hadn't heard. Her heart lurched. She snapped her gaze to the mirror. The reflection was no longer standing still. It was moving. Not rushing, not jerking. Moving with purpose. It crossed the space inside the glass in long, confident strides, posture perfect, movement smooth in a way hers never were anymore. It stopped exactly where she had seen it stop before, in that final rehearsal. The one she hadn't let herself watch to the end. No, she whispered, scrambling backward on the floor, palms slipping against the carpet. I didn't mean to. The reflection didn't look at her. It lay down on the bed. She had missed something. That was the first, sickening realization. The second came immediately after. The reflection wasn't careful anymore. It didn't arrange the pillow, it didn't test the mattress, it didn't pause. It knew. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She forced herself to stand, legs screaming in protest, eyes locked on the glass. "I'm awake now," she said desperately. I'm watching." The reflection turned its head. Its eyes met hers. And for the first time since this began, there was no recognition in them. No checking, no measuring. No need. It didn't need me anymore. The words fell out of her mouth in a broken whisper. The reflection sat up. It moved faster now, efficient, precise. There was no hesitation in its body language, no uncertainty. Every motion flowed into the next as if it had been practiced hundreds of times. Because it had. It stood. She staggered forward, reaching out, fingers scraping uselessly through the air. "Wait," she begged. "Please just wait." The reflection walked toward the mirror. Her heart stuttered. It raised its hand. She raised hers too, trembling. The reflection's palm pressed flat against the glass. Her own hand hit empty air an inch short. The barrier no longer felt solid. The reflection leaned in, so close now she could see details she had never noticed before. The faint scar on the wrist, the tired crease beside the mouth. Her scar, her crease. But not her fear. "It didn't need me anymore," she said again, louder this time, voice cracking. The reflection smiled. Not the small, unsettling smiles from before. This one was calm. Satisfied. It turned away from the mirror. Her breath caught painfully in her throat. "No," she whispered. "You're not done, you didn't." The reflection walked to the edge of the bed. She knew what came next. She had seen it. She just hadn't been watching this time. The reflection stepped forward. Her scream tore out of her chest, raw and animal. She lunged toward the mirror, slamming her fists against the wall beside it, nails breaking, pain flaring bright and useless. Inside the glass, the reflection fell. The sound was wrong. Too soft. Too final. The reflection lay still. Her legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing, breath coming in broken gasps. "No, no, no, this isn't." Minutes passed. Or seconds. Time meant nothing now. Slowly, so slowly it felt cruel, the reflection moved again. It stood. Her blood ran cold. The reflection turned toward the mirror one last time. Toward her. It stepped closer. She backed away instinctively, spine hitting the wall, nowhere left to go. The reflection raised its hand and touched the glass from the other side. The surface rippled. Her vision blurred with tears. "I'm awake," she whispered weakly. "I'm right here, I'm still." The reflection's fingers pressed through the mirror. The glass did not shatter. It opened. "It didn't need me anymore," she sobbed, the phrase breaking apart now, losing shape and meaning. "It didn't need me." The reflection stepped forward. Out of the mirror. Into the room. She screamed. And for the first time in days, she didn't see what happened next. Because she closed her eyes. And this time, there was nothing left to watch. Chapter 10. My reflection is still awake. Morning arrived without ceremony. No light through the blinds. No birds. No sense of relief. Just a gradual thinning of the dark, like the night had grown tired of holding its shape. She lay on the bedroom floor where she had collapsed, cheek pressed to the carpet, body aching in unfamiliar ways. Every muscle felt bruised, as if she had been handled roughly, or as if she had struggled without remembering how. She was alive. That fact took a long time to settle. She pushed herself upright, joints protesting, head throbbing with a deep, dull pain. The room looked unchanged at first glance. The bed rumpled, the wall bare where the mirror had once hung, the faint smell of dust and sweat lingering in the air. Too normal. Her heart began to pound again. Slowly, she turned toward the place where the mirror fragment still clung to the wall. It was there, whole, unbroken, a tall, seamless rectangle of glass, as if it had never been shattered at all. Her breath caught painfully in her throat. She stood on unsteady legs and approached it, every step measured, cautious. Her reflection came into view and stopped. It did not move when she did. She lifted her hand. The reflection did not. She tilted her head, pulse roaring in her ears. The reflection remained perfectly still. Her knees nearly buckled with relief, so sharp it hurt. A shaky laugh escaped her, half sob, half disbelief. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally." The reflection smiled, not in response to her movement, not as mimicry. On its own. The smile was small, patient. Waiting. She stepped back. The reflection stayed where it was. Her stomach twisted. The rules had changed again. She backed away slowly, eyes locked on the glass. The reflection didn't follow, it didn't rehearse, it didn't anticipate. It simply watched. Hours passed, though outside, the day stayed the same. She sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember retrieving, staring at the mirror from across the room. Her body begged for sleep now, true, heavy exhaustion pulling at her bones, but fear kept her upright. She tested herself carefully. She blinked. Nothing happened. She looked away for a full 5 seconds, heart hammering, then looked back. The reflection was unchanged. Still smiling. Still waiting. The realization came slowly, settling into her chest with terrible weight. The mirror didn't need to practice anymore. It didn't need to copy. Whatever had happened in that lost moment, those seconds when she had closed her eyes, it had finished. Now it was her turn to be watched. She didn't leave the apartment that day, or the next. She moved through the rooms cautiously, avoiding reflective surfaces out of habit even though she knew it wouldn't help. Every mirror showed the same thing now. Her reflection, standing just slightly straighter than she felt. Watching her sleep or not sleep. Watching her eat. Watching her pace. Never moving first. Never lagging. Never rehearsing. Just waiting. She began to notice other changes too. Time felt slippery. She would sit down, exhausted, and then find herself standing again without remembering the transition. Food disappeared from the fridge without her recalling eating it. Bruises appeared on her arms, faint and fingertip-shaped. At night, she dreamed of standing inside glass, watching someone who looked like her move through the apartment with cautious familiarity. In those dreams, she never blinked. She stopped checking the mirror after that. There was no point. Weeks passed, maybe months. The calendar on her phone remained stuck on the same date, battery long dead. The outside world faded to background noise, distant sirens, muffled voices, life continuing without her. Sometimes, when she caught her reflection accidentally, it looked tired. Sometimes it looked amused. And sometimes, late at night, when the apartment was quiet and her thoughts grew soft around the edges, she felt a presence behind her. Standing very still. Very awake. She learned to live with it. What choice did she have? One night she sat on the bed and spoke without turning around. "Are you going to do it?" she asked softly. The mirror did not answer. It didn't need to. Because in the glass, her reflection wasn't copying her anymore. It was waiting for her to make a mistake. Waiting for her to rest. Waiting for her eyes to close just a little too long. And somewhere deep in the quiet part of her mind, a final understanding took root, cold, certain, inescapable. One day she wouldn't wake up first. And if you're listening to this at night, if the room around you feels too quiet, if you've been awake longer than you should, check the mirror, because somewhere right now, your reflection might still be awake.
Closing chapter.
Lack of sleep doesn't just break your body, it loosens your grip on reality. This story wasn't about mirrors or reflections or even the future. It was about what happens when you stay awake long enough for something else to take your place. Because the longer you watch yourself, the more time it has to study you. And one night when you finally close your eyes, it won't be copying anymore, it will be continuing. So tonight, when the room goes quiet and the mirror goes dark, ask yourself one question before you sleep. When you wake up, will you be the one doing the moving? If this story followed you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and listen again. Because some stories change when you're tired enough.